Welcome back. This is another exciting episode of Mr. Takeda Teaches Algebra. I'm your host, Mr. Takeda, and I'm going to teach you some algebra right now. This is lesson 7.5, and where we ask the question, how can we factor a simple trinomial, trinomial? And we actually call this simple factorable. And why? Because in front of the x squared here, there's no coefficient. Well, really, there's a coefficient of 1. That makes things very easy for us when it comes to factoring these things. Okay, so how do we factor this into the product of two binomials? Let's take a look here. Okay, so how do we do this here? Let's take a look at the example here. Well, notice we start with x squared. All these polynomials we're going to look at today start with x squared. Well, that's always going to be the product of x times x. So that makes things real easy for us. And then what's going to happen here is the numbers that go at the end of each binomial, the sum of those numbers, p in this case p plus q, is going to be the coefficient of our middle term, and p times q, the product, is going to be the last term. So here's some examples where I'm not going to, you can look at those real quick, but I'm going to just do some for us, and you'll get a hang of this real quick. Okay, factoring b and c, when b and c are positive. So everything's positive, makes things real easy here. So I start with two empty sets of parentheses, and I know that x squared, my first term of the polynomial, is going to be the result of x times x. That's all that can be. X times x. Okay. Now, what did we say about these last two numbers here? How do we get these last two numbers? Well, I need a pair of numbers that multiply together to equal 16, but add together to equal 10. Now, you can, if you're not sure, you can factor 16. You can say, well, that's 1 times 16. That's 2 times 8. And that's it, right? So, or 4 times 4. I'm sorry, 4 times 4. So those are my factors of 16. But which of these, when I add them up, equal 10? Well, the middle pair. 2 plus 8 equals 10. So this will be x plus 2 and x plus 8. That's my factor form. If I was to multiply these together, x times x is x squared, x times 8, 8x, 2 times x is 2x, and 2 times 8 is 16. And of course, those equal 10x. So that's how we factor when they're both positive. It's very simple when they're both positive. Now, in this case, b is negative and c is positive, but we ask ourselves the same question. We just have more factors to check. I need a pair of numbers that multiply together to equal positive 12, but add together to equal negative 8. Well, if they multiply together to equal positive number and add together to equal a negative number, well, that means they're both going to be negative numbers, right? So that makes things easy for us. So I can think 1 and 12. I can think 2 and 6. I can think 3 and 4. Well, 2 plus 6 is 8. And what makes that easy for us is that negative 2 and negative 6 equal negative 8, which is what I'm looking for. So x minus 2 and then x minus 6. That's my factored form of this polynomial. All right? So far, so good. If you're not sure, just back this up and watch it just another time and you'll get it. Okay, now when c is negative, we're going to ask ourselves the same question here, but there's more options. So you can take this down if you want, but let's just move on to an example here. If c is negative, what does this mean? If c is negative, that means that one of my factors has to be positive, one has to be negative, right? But still, when I add them together, I want to, in this case, I want a positive number, which means the larger of the numbers, let's talk about really the larger absolute value has to be positive. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this one. Pair of parentheses, x and x. My factors for 21 are 1 and 21 and 3 and 7, right? Okay, so in this case, what I can do, I can put the 3 and the 7. Sometimes I'll do this. I'll put the 3 and the 7. I'm thinking I want the one has to be positive, one has to be negative. I want them to add up to be a positive number, which means I want the larger number here to be positive. The smaller one is going to be negative, right? 7 times negative 3 is negative 21. But 7 plus negative 3 is a positive 4. That's it. That's our factored form. That's it for now. That was very simple. Again, these are called simple factorable just for that reason. Once we get into having a coefficient on the beginning term, things get a little more difficult. All right, I'll see you in class. Oh, a real short video. Bye-bye.